What's going on, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome to another edition of Weapons Hot Mission Briefs here on Northeast Streaming Sports. I'm your host, CJ the Painkiller DeSimone, and I'd like to thank those who came in from the YouTube show watching us here on Roku, and actually, believe it or not, have this actually streaming on YouTube as well as Roku tonight. So there's more than one way for you guys to consume Weapons Hot this evening. Tonight, I have a very, very, very special guest. And it is a huge honor for me to bring her on. So I'm going to bring her in the way that I know that I can. And anybody who's been a fan of Weapons Hot Mission Briefs or just Weapons Hot in general, especially when we were on the Worldwide Sports Radio Network, one of the things we knew how to do was introduce our guests. So, unfortunately, I don't have any music to play along because normally I would play a special song in the background. But once I get the rest of my setup all done, then I tell you, it's going to be a lot of fun. So I invite you guys to stick around. In the coming weeks, in the coming months, it's going to get better and better and better, I promise. So without further ado, let me go ahead and introduce our guest. She is the host of the All Things Football, All Things Sports from a lady's perspective. Ladies and gentlemen, it is my great pleasure to introduce another co-host from the Northeast Streaming Sports Network, Miss Sonja Pearson.
Hi, CJ. Thank you so much for that amazing welcome and greeting. And hello, everyone out there that is watching us on Roku and all the socials.
Sonja, it is my great pleasure to bring you on. I know that we've talked about this in the past few weeks about me getting you on here on this show. So finally, we got the opportunity to get you on. Hopefully one of many, many times that we will have you on our show joining. And also, I would also like to get you on my YouTube channel one of these days. So we'll coordinate with that and have some fun with that. But first, because this is yay, it's gonna be awesome. Yay, oh my god.
Yes.
So
always have the hearts crooked.
always. So since this is your first time here on Mission Briefs, please tell the audience a little bit about yourself.
So, hi everyone, I'm Sonja Pearson. I am the founder, producer, host for what was formerly known as All Things Football from a Lady's Perspective, All Things Sports, and actually Prim and Proper Sports. You can find me on YouTube and all socials at that handle at Prim and Proper Sports. I am originally from North Carolina, but I have been living in the Atlanta, Georgia area for over half my life. I am also the founder of the all-female fan club of the Carolina Panthers, the Carolina Pantherettes. Almost 10 years now. We have about 10,000 ladies worldwide. And I also am, like CJ mentioned, one of the amazing hosts over at Northeast Streaming Sports. Shout out to Linda and Mac, the amazing producers over there, for putting me on. And I've been podcasting for, about 7 years. And so just excited to be here. Thanks so much for having me, CJ.
Oh, it is my pleasure. And I tell you, from all of the interactions that I've had with you in the very short time that I've been here at Northeast Streaming Sports, I've always had the tremendous amount of respect for you, because especially being a woman, being able to cover sports, and I've never met someone as passionate as you are, especially about the Carolina Panthers. Now, I have a good buddy of mine who I used to work with, the Patrick Space Force Base, who's recently retired from the Air Force, Senior Master Sergeant, former First Sergeant Matthew Sansotsky. I've been trying to get in touch with him on Facebook because he is like there's Carolina Panthers fans, and then there's him. He just is just unbelievable, absolutely unbelievable. And believe it or not, I had him on one of my shows for Weapons Hot when I was originally with the Worldwide Sports Radio Network, and I had a blast talking football with him. He was amazing. As a matter of fact, we even made a bet where that I lost, and the loser would have to wear the other team's jersey and do their fights, their fight cheer. So if the Jets would have won, he would have had to wear my Don Maynard jersey. and say the Jets chant. If he won, then I had to wear a Carolina Panthers jersey and I had to do the keep pounding. So,
Yay. That's always great.
and so it was a lot of fun because we actually had somebody video the bet, and I was like, hey, I always keep my end of the bet. If I make a bet and I lose, I always pay up. So and it was awesome. And I had a blast doing it. And Matt's just an awesome guy. I wish him well in retirement. And he was just such a pleasure to work with over at Patrick. So
And thank him for his service as well. Thank you for your honorable service to our country.
all right. So I got to make sure I share this show with him so that way he can see all of this because I think that would he would definitely enjoy it and get a good smile out of it. So NFL free agency. Here we are. Okay. The New York Jets have made some moves. Carolina Panthers are starting to make some moves. You guys just got Deontay Johnson from the Steelers.
Mm-hmm.
Believe it or not, that's kind of that's a good piece. A good receiver for Bryce Young to have. So the New York Jets finally built themselves an offensive line, acquiring Morgan Moses in a trade, going ahead and signing John Simpson, and then most recently this past Friday poaching from the Dallas Cowboys, Pro Bowl offensive lineman Tyron Smith. So just out of curiosity, because I know you like to keep your eyes out on not just what Carolina's doing in free agency, but what all 32 teams are doing in free agency.
Mm-hmm.
So give me your opinion as to free agency up to this point.
So we've had quite a very busy free agency time. In fact, this has been arguably one of the most busiest free agency times that we've had NFL. We've seen quite a few surprises, including yesterday, the shock of Justin Fields going to the Pittsburgh Steelers, basically to be the number 2 behind Russell Wilson. However, my mindset is they only signed Russell for 1 year. Anytime you're signing a quarterback for 1 year, you're basically saying this person has to come in and basically earn their spot, run against unopposed, basically. And so with Justin being there, even though he was a starting quarterback for the Bears, this may be one of those situations that if Russell doesn't live up to the hype midway season, perhaps, we could see Justin Fields assuming the number 1 position. I honestly, CJ, was shocked about that. The Bears pretty much waited up until the last minute to let anyone know what was happening, whether or not they were going to keep their number 1, draft pick. And, I think they waited so late that kind of some of the pickings were slim as far as trading him. Same thing with the Panthers. Brian Burns went out this week, but I do want to share something which was very concerning to me. The Panthers in 2022, Brian Burns' name came up a couple of times before this recent season. In 2022, the Panthers made a decision that is now being widely regarded as an all-time bad move. They rejected an offer from the LA Rams that included 2 first-round picks for Brian Burns. So now you see that they didn't take that offer. They kept Brian Burns. Here we are now. They traded him to the Giants. In exchange, we only are receiving a second-round, 5th pick when we actually are in a position that we need the number 1 pick because we gave our number 1 pick to Chicago. The Giants are not only acquiring Burns, but they're also signing him to a massive deal, 5-year contract, reportedly worth up to $150 million, with 87.5 guaranteed of that. The value of Burns has shifted significantly since then, and the Giants are banking on Burns to not only bolster their defense, but the Panthers, in the essence, got the short end of the stick. Because we have to look and see, we missed out, mismanagement. So when you talk about free agency, from that perspective, the Panthers signed about 5 players. You mentioned one. We also got Ashawn Jackson, Mr. Lewis, a few other people that I honestly don't know a lot of buzz about them. They're basically supposedly building the O-line, but they're building the O-line behind other veterans that, in my opinion, They're not star names that I've seen. We don't see any of the, the offense for the running back, Derrick Henry, who is gone to the Ravens now. Those are the names I would have liked to have seen. But when you're already dealing with, a salary cap issue as well as no draft picks, you're really limited. It's going to be interesting to see what the Jets end up doing with the entire quarterback situation that you all are facing, knowing that Zach Wilson will not go forward. If Aaron Rodgers comes back and is not able to perform up to what the Jets are seeing, are they going to actually go and get them a number 2 guy to kind of be there to alleviate some of the pressure off Rodgers should that season fall through? So we're seeing that across the board. We're kind of seeing a continuation, in my opinion, of this season going into the next, a bleed over, because we saw a quarterback carousel, 62 rookie starts in this season alone from backup quarterbacks and rookie quarterbacks who had not seen downs otherwise because of injuries for the main star.
Yeah, we've gotten to see a lot of rookie quarterbacks actually have success, i.e. CJ Stroud, although his situation is rather unique. Another thing too was just interesting about, Kirk Cousins going to Atlanta, but I was pleased to see the New York Jets actually address their backup quarterback situation in the signing of Tyrod Taylor. Granted, I wanted Jacoby Brissett. You guys know I wanted Jacoby Brissett. I made that very, very clear that not only did I want Jacoby Brissett, but I wanted the Jets to also make a deal with the Patriots to acquire Mac Jones, who Mac Jones ended up obviously being traded someplace else. Much to my dismay, but at least he's out of the AFC East. So the way I look at it's like this. At least now, if God forbid something does happen to Aaron Rodgers, we are not holding the steering wheel like this with the white knuckles, praying that we stay on the road on the icy, slippery slope because we have Zach Wilson as quarterback. Zach Wilson, chances are, probably will either be dealt or he'll be outright cut or whatever. But we have seen the last of Zach Wilson in the New York Jets uniform. Thank God. That's all I have to say about that. But as far as the Jets as far as the Jets free agency so far, the biggest names that I thought, acquiring Morgan Moses for a trade, getting Tyron Smith, which is huge, because that definitely fortifies their line. You bring back a healthy AVT. You've got Joe Tippmann at center. You now have a solid offensive line in front of Aaron Rodgers, where even if this offensive line plays, they're ranked 15th or 16th in the league, the New York Jets turn from a 7-10 football team to a playoff football team. Because there were arguably games over the past 2 years that if it weren't for shoddy quarterback play, if it wasn't for shoddy offensive play, where the Jets could have easily tacked on another 3 to 4 wins to their win total. So, and this year, especially because it being a official but unofficial playoff mandate from Woody Johnson to Joe Douglas and Robert Saleh to make the playoffs. So, in your opinion, who else do you see besides Joe Douglas and Robert Saleh being on the hot seat going into this season, that if their team underperforms expectations, could we see another coaching carousel next year?
So that's interesting you say that, because I do believe that a healthy Aaron Rodgers and bringing in the weapons that the Jets already have brought in, definitely Robert Saleh will be on the hot seat. I don't even think it's going to be one of those wait until Black Monday situations. I honestly feel like I kind of give everybody the mid-season gauge. Like before it even gets to double digits, we're, at 18 weeks, even though the league is kind of asking for 19 now. We see that being pushed.
Yep, we do see that.
The week 7 mark would be the problem. But the other thing is it's going to depend on what the Jets actually end up doing with Zach Wilson, because right now he has not been traded. Jones and Fields, those Mac Jones, that's who I'm speaking about, and Justin Fields, they found home. But Wilson doesn't have like the trade value that we actually thought. they're looking to try to get him done because he's coming up to the last seasons of his rookie deal. I think he's looking at 22.4 million for the team options up to 2025. If he had 3 seasons to prove himself as a starter, and the return is he's gotten 92.93 yards, 23 touchdowns, 25 interceptions, and a 57% completion rate. So not too solid. I am impressed with the yards that he has. But the fact that they need to actually cut him so they can bring even some more weapons in to try to assist the Jets would be what I'm looking at, because right now they have a $11.2 million salary cap right now that they definitely need to try to get him out of there so that the front office can get in some talent. Robert Saleh, no doubt, will definitely be on the hot seat. I remember the Jets had brought in Frank Wright to basically consult with them as far as, I don't know what that was about. They didn't give Frank Wright a job, to my understanding, but he was brought in after he was released from the Panthers to consult with them about who they should be bringing in as coordinators and offensive and defensive special teams, that kind of thing across the board. So I really don't know how helpful that was, but I will say, this has got to be a season to sure improve. The Jets went all out to get Aaron Rodgers, not as far out as the Panthers did with Bryce Young, but all out nonetheless. But you have to know that Aaron Rodgers is kind of hitting that twilight streak as far as his career is anyway. And once you start having injuries, kind of like you brought up Kirk Cousins coming to the Falcons, Kirk has had a similar injury as well. He's come back. He and Aaron Rodgers are not too far apart in age. And so it's going to be interesting to see. Aaron's about to turn 40 or 39 this year, I believe. Kirk Cousins is like 36, 35. Same way as far as, in football years, it's time to show up and prove, or we don't know how. And then the Jets have so much time left on Aaron Rodgers' contract as well. That's another thing. How is this going to all work out?
Well, see, that's interesting because, Aaron Rodgers has made comments that he would like to play 2, possibly 3 more years. So I think that should the Jets end up making the playoffs this year which I think at this point now, with the free agency moves that they made, as soon as they are able to get themselves, another weapon out there for Aaron Rodgers to get out there, because the great Aaron Lazard project just crashed and burned. But my thing is that I think that if Aaron Rodgers can stay healthy and the Jets offensive line can stay healthy, I really do think that it makes them that much better of a football team. Because if you saw it, if you went and took a look at the Jets last year, right? At the first part of the year, all right, even when they came out of the bye and they beat the Giants, and even though I went on the Northeast Professional Sports Show and I, went at it with Mac, I don't remember if you were there or not, but I remember going at it with Mac about it because, Jets played the Giants, and there was my thought about it where I felt like you are not going to be able to get away with this type of quarterback play going against an LA Charger team, which are playing on Monday Night Football. And sure enough, after they got beat and pretty much embarrassed on Monday Night Football, that's when the downhill slope started. That's when the wheels started to come off the wagon. Then we started seeing more offensive linemen get hurt. We saw Tim Boyle in there, who should have never been allowed to suit up in an NFL uniform ever take the field. Okay. And then the Jets' mighty answer at backup quarterback was Trevor Siemian, which to me was the biggest mistake walking. And you guys know how incredibly outspoken I was about all of this. Nevertheless, again, this all goes back to the addition of the quarterback, not having a backup quarterback in place. Somebody who, if, God forbid, Aaron Rodgers did go down, there was something that you could honestly say there was someone who could step in and can operate the machine until Aaron Rodgers was able to come back. And that's why I was very critical of the New York Jets last year. I still remain critical of them this offseason, but I'm a little bit more cautiously optimistic because of the free agency moves that they've made for the offensive line. So on paper, the Jets look like they could potentially have a playoff team. But again, the game is not played on paper because you know what? We were having this same conversation last year after the acquisition of Aaron Rodgers saying, okay, we're going to pencil the Jets in for, possible division title, but definite wild card. So, yeah, no.
Yeah, the sad thing I noticed is when Rodgers first came, he brought like a whole bunch of folks he knew from Green Bay over with him. I remember he had Lazard, Randall Cobb, McCole Hardman, who went on to the Chiefs and ended up catching that Super Bowl win for them. Corey Davis and Garrett Wilson. And right now, out of everybody, the only ones that are there right now is Wilson and Lazard. And Lazard was benched last season. We don't know what his productivity is going to be if he comes back this season because he's on thin ice. But the Jets are in need of a wide receiver right now. They, now the draft is coming up really soon and it's supposed to be saturated with both quarterbacks and wide receivers. But now that Rodgers has this good production detail, it's basically a revamped offensive line, but they need to add to it some receivers. That's going to be what is going to, improve the depth chart that you guys have going on. I'm going forward. I don't know if they're going to wait until the draft to pick a wide receiver. There were a few wide receivers that are out there right now. Right now, they're saying for the Jets, you guys 3 receivers, Wilson, and then you got your second-year players, Xavier Gibson and Jason Brownlee. But both of those only had 26 catches combined, and they're both rookies. So maybe, adding a veteran wide receiver to the mix would be something you all definitely have to capitalize on. I mean, there's quite a few that are still out there, but it just depends on who you guys get.
See, as far as Alan Lazard having the bad year that he had last year, there's a part of me that's like, okay, if you could trade Alan Lazard and you're able to get yourself a draft pick or whatever, be able to get yourself some adequate compensation to get out from under that contract, you say to yourself, okay. But then there's also a part of me that's kind of like, well, think about it. He didn't have Aaron Rodgers throwing him the ball. And he really tried to do too much to help out Zach Wilson, who we really had little or no chemistry with. So, and there were a couple of times where he went for passes over the middle and he just got completely destroyed. And I remember Randall Cobb saying during training camp, you could potentially lose a receiver for the season that way because then they start getting the yips. They start getting that ghost. They start getting those like the flinches because you're going over the middle. You're trying to catch that ball and you're anticipating when you're going to get that hit. So there could be a possibility that that's maybe what contributed to Alan Lazard's down year. I don't want to totally close the book on him, but if we do deal him and we get adequate compensation, then okay. But I think that with Aaron Rodgers coming back, even if we are not able to unload Alan Lazard for whatever compensation that we could get for him, why not give him another kick at the can?
Yeah, that's what I would say.
Knowing that Aaron Rodgers is going to be there. So
I think that was the issue. I think that it wasn't necessarily Lazard's performance. I think he's used to playing with Rodgers. Rodgers was his guy. And unexpectedly, he's now with Zach Wilson. And so I think that Zach Wilson is the common issue that now that he's out of the equation and that Rodgers comes back and he's a healthy Rodgers, that's going to be very, he doesn't have to be 100%, pre-injury Rodgers, but he does need to be, optimum performance because let's face it, like I said, the Jets are really banking on him and he has the tools there. I think adding a comparable wide receiver or at least, just working with the two that I mentioned a couple of minutes ago, the rookies, I think that could, at least get the Jets into double-digit wins this season.
And what's also interesting is you have Mike Williams, who's actually slated to go visit the Jets tomorrow. He's actually supposed to visit the Panthers on Tuesday.
Oh, wow.
So I had actually I had said on my YouTube channel that if Mike Williams comes in the door, you lock the door and you don't let him leave until he signs a contract.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
But the question is, what's going to be the magic number? And then on top of it, it's one thing, yes, you want to procure Mike Smith, you want to procure a good wide receiver like Mike Williams. But it's also another thing to not leave yourself the flexibility or the maneuverability to be able to make all the deals in other places which could patch all the holes on the team. Because let's face it, the Jets have a ton of holes that they need to fill. So, I mean, some of it's being held together with duct tape and spit. And probably some of it not even that. They're just trying to pretend it's not even a hole. It's like, no, you don't see that hole right over there. It's not there. It's just a figment of your imagination. Right, exactly. So, I mean, the main thing for me was I wanted to see them address the offensive line, which they did. I still want to see them address some more depth. I want to see backup guys because we all know offensive line, defensive line, it's a game of attrition. Throughout a 16, 17-game season, guys are going to get hurt. So last year, the Jets started 13 different offensive line combinations in an 18-game season. That is completely unheard of. I mean, we had third and fourth stringers and guys that they actually brought in off the street. I'm surprised that Joe Douglas didn't buy a couple of rain barrels and put a traffic cone out there. So that was probably the only thing they didn't try out there. But they ended up getting a couple of good, they got a couple of good depth guys, which they ended up finding. But they also learned who's trash on their team and who needed to get going. So, now that being said, what I want to see them do is I want to continue to see them build smartly and not just foolishly spend money. Because remember, the Jets came into this with $26 million under the cap to spend.
Yeah.
And if you think about it, even after your draft picks, realistically, take $10 million off of that number. So now you have $16 million that you're trying to fit. So you're trying to defer as much as you can to year 2 and year 3 within the contract, or try to make the contract either incentive laden or team friendly, where if it doesn't work out after 1 year, you can cut bait and be out. So
they're gonna have to restructure some contracts. I know I saw yesterday that Carolina restructured Shaq Thompson's contract again. His name was up when Brian Burns was a couple times, and they kept him. And so they are restructuring. And, to me, that means they're paying them less. I know the big thing when Russell Wilson was in Denver with the injury clause on these contracts.
Yep.
I don't know if a lot of teams are just not, imputing them out there to make sure that they are mandating those, because I would think with Aaron Rodgers, I think with his injury not playing, I think it was 76% of the snaps or something like that. The fact that he didn't that first season, I don't know how. It seems like they would have been able to pay him a little less the first year or the first season, but I'm not sure if that's kind of as the contract, old ages or whatever. And then they look at it, or if that's from jump, like if you get hurt or whatever, then your contract is going to be less from the beginning. What is your understanding on that?
Well, I really would love to give you an answer on that, but we got about 30 seconds left before we got to get out of here. So tune in on Wednesday night when I give my answer to that question. So, Miss Sonja, real quick, thank you so much for coming on and for joining me tonight.
Thank you for having me.
It was my pleasure. And ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much tonight for tuning into Weapons On Mission Briefs. Don't forget to check us out every single Sunday night at 10 p.m. Check out the YouTube channel. Don't forget to check out Prim and Proper Sports, a must-watch. Go subscribe to that YouTube channel. Go follow that Facebook page. Hit us up on Northeast Streaming Sports. This is the Painkiller signing out. We will see you guys when we see you guys.
Good night.